is exactly what you're about to get right here. Winning Wednesday with Morpheus with could be, it's more than could be. It is going to be the most interesting conversation that you have had all week long. That's right. April 20th, Winning Wednesday, we have the Chief Learning Officer of the Air Force from AETC, Dr. Wendy Walsh, here with us. Oh, the counter stopped. It didn't go. Most of the time, I would say, hey, you got 15 seconds left. Apparently, you have none. So we'll just get this party started now. Oh, we'll get started. Hey, Trigger Jordan here again with Morpheus, bringing you the wins every Wednesday. Quick, easy content for you to consume to realize there's a lot of goodness taking place in the innovation ecosystem. And this week, we have none other than the Chief Learning Officer of the Air Force, right here. Air Education Training Command, Dr. Wendy Walsh. I could not, we've had so much fun last week. We've had so much fun today with a podcast that was shot that is going to be released next week that you need to listen and tune in for sure. But good doctor, there has been so many great conversations had. First and foremost, for anybody who's tuning in now or even later, I did not know until our podcast that we had a Chief Learning Officer, but we do, and it's you, and you're awesome, and the position of it is awesome. So would you tell us? I mean, I guess it's pretty self-explanatory, but we have a learning officer, but that's really important because what we do, with the directives that Chief Brown has given us of change or lose, the process of change requires a lot of learning along the way. So what is a learning officer for those of us who don't know, and that focus of what that position is and what you do, what that is?
All right. Well, thank you. And thanks for having me here. So I am actually the Air Force's third Chief Learning Officer. And so there was a little bit of a break from Dr. Stafford, who had the position before me, and myself. I work at the Air Education Training Command in San Antonio, Texas. I work directly for General Webb and General Tullis, and it's a dream job. So really what the job is about looking at how the Air Force learns. What's the opportunities for learning across the career of an airman, meaning our enlisted, our guard, our civilian, everybody who's a part of the Air Force. Where are the opportunities for us to learn, to grow? In the next, when we do the podcast, that when they show that, we're going to talk a little bit more about competencies, but really developing and understanding an evidence-based way to do that learning. So what are the competencies that we need to know to do our jobs better? How can we measure that? How can we navigate career paths? How can we really fully actualize what our potential and what possibilities we have to be of best service to the Air Force? So I'm looking at that, and so many people are part of that enterprise. People are doing it from basic training, tech training, all of the different courses that people can take. They're doing it virtually. They're doing it asynchronous, meaning that you just log in, you watch different things, and you can learn kind of more of a passive way of learning, active in here always.
Yeah.
Or, we're really engaging with people. But it's not just training, it's not just education, but it's also about experience. How do we really take the experiences that we have in our daily lives that we're working and learn from them, reflect on them? So, and how does the Air Force provide space for learning to occur? We have a huge mission. We're moving very fast, to protect and defend this nation. How do we ensure that we're giving ourselves the time that we need to reflect and to learn and apply that learning to ensure success, more success as we move forward? So that's kind of it's a giant job, and it's way more than one person does. It's really about kind of connecting the network and ensuring interconnectedness. So I've only been in the job, this is like my 5.5 months. So I'm giving you the snapshot of what I know now. But as I've been traveling around and seeing what's happening, it's amazing. It's inspiring. And I'm pinching myself, literally. Best job in the world, to be able to work with the United States Air Force, see the learning that's happening, the professionalism, and also the potential. Because I think there are people across our force that are feeling a little like, I could do more. There's more for me. There's just more out there, other ways that I can serve, or this isn't quite working. And that's why this whole innovation enterprise that's happening is so critical for us to look at, to empower, and to provide space for. So I'm incredibly excited to be here with you and the community that's really tracking innovation as well. Innovation is learning.
Yeah. Well, yes, it is. It is. And I got to tell you, I have to tell you to the listeners, she's really good at her job. I mean, she's really crushing it here because it has been literally what was going to be one episode of Disruptive AF turned into a part one of part two. I don't know. It could be just 17 parts by the time we're done with it. Because when you start talking about the wins of learning and the importance of what that is and helping, as we talked about yesterday, helping the movement of the Office of Human Possibilities of what can be, what is possible. I feel like, just my perception from my point of view, but I feel like so many times I've pigeonholed myself based on what I think my experience is, that I've actually stopped the ability to even explore, could this happen, or could I do this, or what would happen if, and I think we do that a lot of times, oftentimes, and it leaves us kind of in the same spot. And that's something you mentioned before. So in being in that spot now, 5 months as the third CLO, what are some of the awesome things you've seen just across the Air Force? Because you're right, this is the coolest job. You do have the coolest job. I get to meet and talk to people, but what are some of the things you've seen thus far of just wins or exciting?
So it's hard to pick them. And I know we have a short segment here. I just one of the first things I did was went to an AFWorks event. And in that AFWorks event, we looked at what is the future of enlisted education. So this whole providing space to look at the future, that is super cool. And that just says to me, this agency, this organization has the right mindset, a growth mindset that doesn't just mired down in what's happening now and where they are right now, but thinking about where do we need to be. There's a phrase that General Webb uses, and lots of people use it now, and it's DAWN, developing the airmen we need. Again, this idea of foresight. I mentioned the competencies and how important competencies are, but it's like anything, like a strategic plan, sitting on it. Whoa, we wrote it up and it sits on a shelf, and we'll pull it out and see what measures we have to it. But how do you make it real? How do you make it part of what we're doing day to day? So I've been looking, as I've been traveling around, how are people utilizing the competencies? How are people understanding what is a competency? And people are moving towards it, trying to understand what are the competencies needed for the different career fields? How would we measure them? What would they look like? And as well as the foundational competencies, we have 24 foundational competencies that help us to develop the self, to develop others, to develop ideas, and really look at developing the entire organization. So how are we really helping people from the minute they come into the Air Force, basic training up through tech training, really reinforcing these? And so I had a chance to go out to Lackland and talk to the 37th and ask about, hey, how is this happening? And they're like, we're doing it. We're re-looking at our curricula all the time. It's happening. But I couldn't get real specific examples. Then I got a chance to walk around. When you walk around, you really see what's happening. And so again, looking for evidence. And just recently, a memo came out about airmen's time, and that was on my mind too. And I got to see airman time in action. Like it was in kind of the dorm area in a living room. Airmen sitting around together talking about relationships was the topic that they were talking about. And they had an iPad, so they're leveraging technology, thrown up on the screen. We're going to talk about relationships today. And then the very next slide they shared was the core competency, the foundational competencies of the Air Force, and how the discussion was really reinforcing those competencies. So making strong ties to what is our doctrine, foundational competencies, to what people are learning, to what people are living. In this airman's time, I'm kind of an emotional crier type, easy to tears. It just hits me, the power of people. I love people. And an airman shared in that time, that they had a relationship with a friend through middle school, high school, and then kind of got mixed messages and was feeling like maybe they were getting some signals that maybe I should ask you out for a date, but it didn't work out. And then they just weren't together. It was what I saw in that group were people like, whoa, that was rough. First, the vulnerability of the airmen to feel safe to
Yeah.
share that with this group, and then for the group to be there for him. It was clearly evident that we had created psychological safety
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
basic training. I mean,
Yeah.
it was beautiful to see that people really connecting at that level, and then tying this to these are the foundational competencies of the Air Force. This is what we want. We want people who communicate, who are creative, who are thinking about how they can be the best people, be good teammates, and doing that at all different levels of their training. So definitely a win to see that in practice.
Yeah. That as you described that, I'm just gonna play. I'm not even gonna say what advocate I'm gonna play, but there are many conversations. I'm sure maybe you've heard them. Maybe you heard them when people found out that you're coming to the military, coming to the Air Force. There's a mindset, or has been a mindset out there of the military needs to toughen up. Things have gotten too easy. Blah 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 blah. Of that would look. I think sometimes look at scenarios like that where you're talking about things that in the moment, where I've literally heard people say, "Why are we talking about this? Like, why are we should be doing this. We should be focusing on the other things." And this is why I'd say, again, this is just my opinion, but I have the microphone, so I can say my opinion. My thought is here's the deal. Oftentimes we forget you're a human, and life happens, and life happens sometimes hard and fast. And this is the reality. When you talk about learning, you're talking about the condition of our mindset, of how we approach things and how we think about things. And the reality is, man, until you're asleep, like, this thing doesn't shut off. And even then it's rebooting itself. It doesn't actually shut off. It's getting back engaged. And to me, this is one of those just really important ideas to think about when we're talking about innovation and learning and thinking differently is that innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It shouldn't happen in a vacuum. If it does, then it's really not innovation. It has to have space to think, to move outside the bounds of the norm. And to me, I think some of the greatest wins that we're having and continuing to have is when we take real life aspects of this human possibility of what we can do if we take the bounds off of what we think normal is, and we have those discussions, not just the Airman's Times discussion, but maybe discussions of, hey, what are the actual problems we have? And to me, this line of thinking comes right back to the competency-based training, because so many times we bring a solution to a problem that doesn't actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
We are solving the symptom of a problem, and we take a solution and say, oh, this will solve it. Well, it didn't actually solve the problem because we didn't actually get to the root cause. And if you think about education, that root cause analysis is what a competency is. Like, you do this thing, but in order to do that thing, you have to have these competencies, and we need to focus on developing those. To me, those discussions of getting to the root of what is actually going on, what is real life, what is actually happening, what's actually happening all day, every day in our minds and our experiences in our workplaces, this is what learning is. This is what education is. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's awesome, sometimes it's ugly. I know you have something to say to that.
I know. Well, because as you're talking, it reminds me of another thing that I observed when I was at the 37th. I mean, I've gone a lot of places, but I just want to share these great stories.
Yeah,
So, in the Special Warfare Training Wing, when you talk about that whole person, they're incorporating in their training the mind, the body, and the spirit. So
yeah,
they're really taking a holistic approach and integrating human performance into what they're doing. And
yeah,
you might say, well, that's the elite of the elite, and they need to be doing that, but we all need to be doing that. But
right.
they are leading the charge of how do we do that? How do we look at our nutrition, at how we eat? How do we look at the stress? How do we look at how it's impacting us, and move from just being able to squish it down, compartmentalize, but actually process, be mindful, set ourselves up to be resilient? It was incredible to see the work that has been done there, as well
Yeah,
as in other training aspects across our Air Force. People are looking at that holistic approach of the mind, body, and the spirit, and how do we work together. Again, it's just incredible what I'm seeing and what's possible. And sharing these stories across our community is so important because I know as I continue on, I'm going to see a lot more of what's happening and connect the pieces so that we can, have measures of effectiveness when we take time to really focus on these human aspects and we measure the impact of the time, the investment that we've done. What are the returns? And we need to be able to demonstrate that. I mean, intuitively, we see it. And I think operationally, we see it. But we need to tell this story in a very clear and concise way so others can see it, so that we can get resources and have the space and time to continue to create that learning space.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, as you discuss that, I don't know if they can see this on their screen. I just literally pulled this up, but
Oh, yeah.
to me, this has kind of been one of the central parts of, if you look at the five components, categories, if you will, of emotional intelligence for anybody who's not aware, because this was relatively new to me until I really got into instruction and teaching and being a instructor pilot, is there's IQ, right? The intelligent quotient. And then you have the emotional. Oh, ringing. Oh, no, you're good.
Sorry about that.
You have and then you have the emotional intelligence, the EQ, emotional quotient. And when you look at those areas, social skills, self-awareness, I don't know if they can see that, self-regulation, empathy, and motivation. If you look at the vast majority of your life on the day-to-day, like 24 hours in a day, every one of these, every single one of these areas is touched on or worked on or that you deal with on a daily basis. You should bring them on the line. You should bring them on the line. Hello, come on in. What do you think about emotional touch? But I think that as you discuss those components and those pieces and what you have seen, to me, this is why this learning aspect in the innovation space is so hugely important, is because even just looking at these 5 categories, you don't get away from it. This is everyday life, and you are working through some aspect of these in every situation, every mission set, whether you're deployed, whether you're at home, whether you're training, whether you're on a mission, and what your mission set is. Like, these are all involved and included. And that's awesome. That's awesome to see that feedback of what's been, of what has been happening. Anything else that really stands out to you of just those lessons learned, exciting pieces that you've seen recently?
Well, I love that you brought up your awareness for emotional intelligence raised when you were into a teaching role, and I think that that teaching and learning component, that dynamic, is really important. Air University just hosted the Military Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. They had a virtual symposium that's going to be available virtually, so we can share the link. And I talk a little bit about that in the follow-on podcast. But I also, and I think we can put this in the chat, the Learning Professionals Consortium at AETC in the A3, they have a Learning Professionals Consortium. And you might think, I'm an innovator, I'm not an educator. Well, I think we're all educators. We all have the opportunity to teach and to learn. So this Learning Professionals, so what he has pulled up right now is the questions and answers, and you can see they do like a monthly meeting where they have a presenter and then you have an opportunity to ask questions, and you can see gamification. I think that's of interest to entrepreneurs and to
Yeah.
innovation. Also, the next one, neuroplasticity.
Oh,
I think many of these topics are of great interest to everyone. So they also record these. So if you don't have a chance to participate live with it, you can go back and look at it if it's a topic that might be of interest. Tomorrow, so they have an annual consortium, and it's usually 3 days, and they've met in person because of COVID last year. They did 3 days virtually, and then this year they're doing 3 days virtually, but it's divided by some months. So they did February, and they're doing one tomorrow. It's too late to register, but you can watch the recording, and they are going to be looking at games for learning, a very interesting topic. And then the next one is in June, and so you can also sign up for that. The growth mindset, you can see they have the link to the Mill Suite there. It's building a culture of learning, and
yeah.
that's for all of us to do, both while we're teachers or just opening that up to learning ourselves, giving ourselves space to learn is so important.
Yeah.
The life is richer when we
Yeah.
take the time to really learn. The life is hard, and there's
Yeah.
a fair amount of suffering, and it happens.
Yeah.
And if we can take that and look at what can we learn from it, what can we reflect on and discern what skills, what competencies, what knowledge do we need to continue to build to be our best selves? And then where are the resources to do that? I think the Learning Professionals Consortium and the Learning Professionals group there has a lot of great resources, a good place to start. Of course, you have My Learning, My Vector. The Air Force has a lot of sites and a lot of resources, Digital University, for us to find opportunities to learn together. And we're looking at, can we create kind of a system of systems so it's easier for us all to navigate where those opportunities are and share those. But I wanted to make sure that people were aware of that Learning Professionals group and felt welcome to be a part of that, that's something for everybody, not just for those official people designated as instructors or faculty or
Yeah,
trainers.
that's that site. Oh my gosh, I'm pulling it up here real quick. That right there. Again, that's Learning Professionals. I love already on the podcast you gave us the Mill Suite where the growth mindset resources are, and it is expansive. I mean, there's a lot of great info there. A lot of great info. It's right there on Mill Suite. In fact, I think the easiest way to find it, honestly, is if you just go to learningprofessionals.af.mil. It's probably save that as a bookmark right now, because on there it refers to the Mill Suite, the growth mindset, and then until you said this, I didn't realize. Embarrassingly, I didn't realize this existed, and it's awesome because already going through it, there are some really amazing events coming up. Specifically talking about, if you don't realize that right there, as you mentioned, July 19th, the neuroplasticity coming up.
Yes.
Really, really amazing. There's the author I really love, Dr. Caroline Leaf, where she talks about the importance of neuroplasticity in your mindset and how your mind and your mindset is incredibly adaptive. I mean, incredibly adaptive. However, you have to give it the chance to be able to do that, to be able to learn, to be able to grow, to be able to focus and think differently. So that really, really, really is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those. And then also next week, your podcast is going to air right here, YouTube. That's the vodcast. Actually, this week, right, there was Noah Morales with the Intelligent Locker released just literally today. Yesterday. Released yesterday. So you can go there to Morpheus on the YouTube page to be able to see that. But Doc, before we get out of here, what is one thing, next week on part 2 of the podcast that we were on Disruptive AF, we're going to be talking about things of what you see in education coming up. We talked about some of the wins you've seen already, but what are some of the things, even now, just a quick little taste for our viewers out there, what are some of the things that you would say you're really excited, looking forward to, for what the innovation ecosystem has to offer, and kind of what you foresee in the future, just as far as learning and what learning looks like as we have this creative mindset, growth mindset at the forefront?
Yeah, that is a giant question to leave me with at the end.
I
I could go on for days on
yeah,
that.
I asked the easy ones
How do
last.
I make that concise? I, I just, I actually want, I'll answer the question in a different way, because really what I'd like to leave people with, I want to reflect on how you said, I'm embarrassed because I didn't know about this Learning Professionals. A lot of people I've been sharing that I've on this Morpheus podcast had not heard of the resources that you had for Morpheus. They don't know about the podcasts that have happened here
Yeah.
in this space. And I think that is what I am so incredibly excited about. And this is really where the future is. The future is in connecting the links.
Yeah.
I mean, connecting the nodes, linking us together, the interconnectedness. There's so much going on in the education, in the innovation spaces that are helping to develop the future airmen that we all want to be, helping us to be the very best that we can be, to serve and just be excited about what we're doing, to be able to see the purpose and value that we're contributing
Yeah.
to this organization. And that comes from the connection, that we're not out there just operating alone, doing what we were trained to do, and it becomes kind of a monotonous sort of thing, but really having that excitement, knowing that there is possibility. And to do that, we have to do it together. So I said I was the third of the learning officers, that the chief learning officers that the Air Force has had.
Yeah.
And the way that I believe a chief learning officer is successful in serving the organization is in working together.
Yeah.
It's being connected. It's being accessible. It's having these conversations. It's not being embarrassed about finding out something, about
Right.
learning something.
Right.
We have to give ourselves space to learn in public, to go, wow, I didn't know that. Or, hey, I knew that a year ago and I totally, that synapses died off because I was focused on something else. So giving ourselves the humility to say it doesn't always connect perfectly, but I'm here to serve. I'm going to create presence and space to learn what I need to do to serve this organization because our mission is just so incredibly important.
Yeah.
And so I guess I want to just leave with that it's interconnection. It's us working together. It's being accessible, being present. And that's the commitment that I'm making to the Air Force, is that I will be committed, available, accessible. I will listen. I will do my best to lead and to ensure that people have a voice and that there is that space for learning. And you'll
Yeah.
help me do it.
Yes. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Incredibly well said. And that was a hard question. I didn't think it was gonna. I didn't initially mean for it to be so expansive, and then bam, you come back and you just answer it full force. No, and like nothing. Didn't even skip a beat. 100%. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you so much for being willing to step into that role. And I speak for the innovation ecosystem, I suppose. In saying it truly is exciting to think what can be coming up and what is going to be coming up, and how we take that mindset and grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Grow. Thank you so incredibly much for being with us. Again, if you haven't done it yet, you need to go to disruptiveaf.com, really anywhere, Disruptive AF, anywhere that podcasts are available, you can find it. It's going to be releasing next week. Listen into it. If you haven't done it, listen to Noah Morales this last week with Intelligent Locker. The guy is crushing it. He truly is. Good doctor. Thank you so much for being with us. We will see you next week and the week after for part 1 and part 2. And thank you so much for being with us right here on Disruptive AF.
Thank you for all that
Winning
you
Wednesdays.
do. This is awesome.
It is awesome having you. Thank you so much. Right here at Morpheus. Thanks for joining us, Winning Wednesday. Follow, like, share, do all the stuff you need to do to be able to share this content and the content you're looking for. Again, thanks so much for joining us right here on Winning Wednesdays with Morpheus. We'll see you next time. Well, actually, we'll see you Friday for Fail Fast Friday. We have Bon Strout coming in. One of the most creative guys I've ever met in my life. He's an inventor extraordinary. He's amazing. We'll see you then.